I'm Mia Thompson, and if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I've always been the responsible one. While my friends are out living their best lives, partying, traveling, or just being reckless, I'm stuck working part-time at the local library in our sleepy Ohio suburb. It's not glamorous, but hey, someone has to pay for college tuition, right? My best friends, Chloe Adams and Ethan Brooks, couldn't be more different from me. Chloe is the queen of spontaneity, always chasing the next thrill, while Ethan is the life of every party, cracking jokes even when no one asked him to. They're fun, carefree, and honestly, a little exhausting sometimes. But here's the thing, I love them. We've been inseparable since high school, and as much as I roll my eyes at their antics, they make life brighter. That's why it stings a little more than usual when they tell me about their spring break plans without even asking if I can join. Miami, baby, Ethan had shouted last week, waving his phone like it was some kind of golden ticket. Chloe added, beach days, rooftop parties, and enough pina coladas to forget all our problems. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my couch with a stack of overdue library books and a looming babysitting gig. Fun, right? So here's the deal. I agreed to babysit Lila and Noah Kendall, my neighbor's kids, because Mrs. Kendall promised me double my usual rate. Their parents were going on a cruise, a second honeymoon, apparently, and needed someone reliable to watch their 8-year-old daughter, Lila, and 5-year-old son, Noah. At first, I thought it'd be easy money. How hard could it be to keep 2 kids entertained for a week? Spoiler alert, way harder than I imagined. When Chloe and Ethan found out, they didn't hesitate to rub it in. Ah, poor Mia, Chloe teased, plopping down on my couch as I packed snacks for the kids. While we're sipping margaritas in Miami, you'll be playing Candyland and reading bedtime stories. Ethan chimed in. Don't worry, we'll send you a postcard from paradise. I forced a laugh, but inside, I felt a sharp pang of envy. Why do they get to have all the fun while I stay behind? Still, I put on a brave face. You guys better bring me back some sunscreen, I joked, pretending I wasn't secretly dreading the week ahead. The morning after Chloe and Ethan left for Miami, I arrived at the Kendalls' house armed with coloring books, puzzles, and a playlist of kid-friendly songs. I figured if I kept the kids busy, the week would fly by. But within 10 minutes, I realized I was in over my head. Lila, the older one, was a pint-sized tornado of energy, declaring she hated board games and wanted to do something exciting instead. Noah, meanwhile, decided it would be hilarious to hide my phone under a pile of stuffed animals. That's when it hit me. Maybe this babysitting gig didn't have to be boring. Sure, I couldn't jet off to Miami, but who said I couldn't create my own adventure right here? As I watched Lila flip through one of her favorite books, a dog-eared copy of A Secret Island, an idea began to form. What if we turn the week into a real-life treasure hunt? Not just some cheesy scavenger hunt around the backyard, but an actual quest worthy of a storybook. I glanced at the kids, who were now arguing over whose turn it was to use the crayons, and grinned. This was going to be interesting. By the end of day 1, I already knew I was dealing with 2 very different personalities. Lila was fiercely independent, obsessed with adventure novels, and had a knack for bossing people around. She reminded me of Chloe, actually, minus the glitter eyeshadow. Noah, on the other hand, was pure mischief. He spent most of the day hiding things, my shoes, the remote control, half a peanut butter sandwich, and giggling uncontrollably whenever I tried to find them. When I announced my plan for a scavenger hunt, Lila immediately jumped on board. Like pirates, she exclaimed, grabbing a plastic sword from her toy chest. Noah, however, crossed his arms and scowled. Pirates are dumb, he muttered. We should be superheroes. For a moment, I panicked. How was I supposed to keep these 2 happy? But then I remembered something important. Kids love feeling included. Okay, I said, crouching down to their level. What if we combine both? Pirates and superheroes. Their eyes lit up, and just like that, Operation Treasure Hunt was born. The next day, I transformed the backyard into a pirate shipwreck. I tied bandanas around our heads, handed Lila a makeshift telescope, a paper towel roll, and gave Noah a superhero cape made from an old dish towel. Together, we solved riddles and followed clues that led us to buried treasure, a box of candy hidden under a pile of leaves. The kids were ecstatic, cheering every time they solved a puzzle. For the first time, I felt like I was actually having fun too. But as the sun set and the kids went inside to change out of their muddy clothes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. I wanted to give them an adventure they'd never forget, one that would rival anything Chloe and Ethan were doing in Miami. That's when I remembered the legend of the mysterious treehouse in the woods behind the neighborhood. According to local gossip, it had been abandoned for decades, and no one really knew what was inside. My heart raced. Maybe this was exactly what we needed. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Apparently, the treehouse had been built by a reclusive artist named Margaret Lane in the 1960s. She used it as a studio, filling it with paintings, sculptures, and strange artifacts she collected during her travels. When she passed away, the treehouse was left untouched, becoming something of a local urban legend. Some people claimed it was haunted, others said it was cursed. Either way, it sounded perfect. The next morning, I pitched the idea to Lila and Noah. What if we go on a real adventure? I asked, lowering my voice dramatically. There's a secret treehouse deep in the woods, and no one knows what's inside. Are you brave enough to help me find it? Lila gasped, clutching her pirate hat. Yes, she whispered wide-eyed. Noah nodded furiously, already tying his superhero cape around his neck. I smiled, feeling a rush of excitement. This was going to be epic. As we spent the next few days preparing for our expedition, I couldn't help but check my phone obsessively. Chloe and Ethan were flooding my inbox with photos of their Miami trip, beach selfies, neon-lit clubs, and plates of food so colorful they looked fake. Each picture made my stomach twist with jealousy. Was I really missing out on the trip of a lifetime just to babysit two hyperactive kids? Then came the text that pushed me over the edge. OMG, Mia, you wouldn't believe how amazing this place is. Chloe wrote, followed by a selfie of her and Ethan lounging by the pool in matching sunglasses. Wish you were here. I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Wish I was there. Yeah, right. Suddenly, I wasn't just doing this for the kids anymore. I was doing it for me. If Chloe and Ethan wanted to brag about their glamorous vacation, fine. But I was going to show them that staying home didn't mean settling for less. In fact, I was about to prove that sometimes the best adventures happen when you least expect them. The morning of the big expedition, I woke up before sunrise, buzzing with nervous energy. I'd spent hours the night before crafting clues and drawing maps for our journey to the treehouse. Lila had helped me write riddles. Her favorite involved rhyming words like treasure and pleasure, while Noah insisted on decorating the map with doodles of sharks, dinosaurs, and what he called superhero symbols. It wasn't exactly professional, but it was ours. When the kids stumbled into the kitchen, still in their pajamas, I handed them each a backpack filled with supplies, granola bars, water bottles, flashlights, and a first aid kit, because let's be real, Noah was bound to trip over something. Their eyes widened as they took in the gear. Are we really going on an adventure? Lila asked, clutching her pirate hat like it was a crown. We're not just going, I said with a grin. We're conquering. As we headed out the door, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was this too ambitious? What if we got lost? What if the treehouse didn't exist at all? But then I looked at Lila and Noah, their faces glowing with excitement, and pushed those thoughts aside. This wasn't just about finding some old treehouse anymore. It was about proving, to myself, to Chloe and Ethan, and maybe even to the universe, that adventure doesn't have to come with a plane ticket or a fancy destination. Sometimes, it's right in your backyard, waiting for you to find it. The woods behind the neighborhood weren't exactly untamed wilderness, but they were dense enough to feel mysterious. Towering oak trees stretched toward the sky, their branches tangled together like nature's own canopy. The air smelled earthy, a mix of damp leaves and pine needles, and sunlight filtered through the foliage in golden beams. For a moment, I forgot we were still technically in Ohio. Lila led the way, clutching the map like a seasoned explorer. Okay, team, she announced, pointing at one of Noah's doodles. This shark means we need to cross the River of Doom. I stifled a laugh as Noah immediately dropped to his knees, pretending to swim. I'm swimming, he shouted, splashing imaginary water with his hands. Careful, superhero, I teased. Even sharks are afraid of your powers. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. We solved riddles, climbed over fallen logs, and laughed until our sides hurt. But as we ventured deeper into the forest, the terrain grew trickier. Vines twisted across the path like stubborn barriers, forcing us to duck and weave. Mosquitoes buzzed around our heads, relentless in their quest for blood. And then, just when I thought we were making progress, the trail markers disappeared. Mia. Lila's voice wavered as she turned to face me. Where are we supposed to go now? I froze, scanning the area for any sign of the markers I'd left earlier. Nothing. My stomach sank. Had I made a mistake? Or had someone, or something, tampered with the trail? Before I could answer, Noah let out a yelp. He was standing near a muddy puddle, holding what used to be our treasure map. In his excitement, he'd accidentally dropped it, and now it was soaked, the ink smudged beyond recognition. Noah! Lila screeched, stomping her foot. You ruined everything. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he crossed his arms defensively. It was an accident, he snapped. For a split second, panic threatened to take over. We were lost, the map was destroyed, and the kids were on the verge of a full-blown meltdown. But then I remembered something my dad used to say. Every great explorer gets lost at least once. Taking a deep breath, I knelt down between them. Hey, I said softly, this is part of the adventure. Remember what we talked about? Real adventurers don't give up when things get hard. They work together. Lila sniffled but nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. So what do we do now? She asked. I smiled, pulling out my phone. We retrace our steps, and if that doesn't work, we'll figure something else out. Together, after what felt like hours, but was probably closer to 30 minutes, we finally found a familiar landmark, a crooked tree with a heart carved into its trunk. Relief washed over me as I realized we were close. We're almost there, I told the kids, trying to sound more confident than I felt. And then, just as I was starting to think the whole thing might be a bust, we saw it. Nestled high among the branches, partially hidden by ivy, was the treehouse. It was smaller than I'd imagined, but no less magical. Weathered planks formed its walls, and colorful murals covered every surface. Birds in flight, swirling galaxies, and abstract shapes that seemed to dance in the dappled light. Inside, we discovered shelves lined with trinkets, seashells, antique keys, tiny glass bottles filled with sand. There was also a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. As I flipped through it, I realized it belonged to Margaret Lane, the artist who had built the treehouse. Her entries spoke of solitude, creativity, and the joy of making art. One passage stood out. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels. They're the moments we create and the people we share them with. Lila and Noah were mesmerized, running their fingers over the artifacts like they'd stumbled into a secret museum. Can we leave something here too? Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. This wasn't just a treehouse, it was a time capsule, a reminder that adventure isn't about where you go, but how you choose to see the world. Just as we were about to head back, the sky darkened ominously. A low rumble echoed through the trees, followed by a sharp crack of lightning. Amia! Noah tugged on my sleeve, his voice trembling. Is that thunder? Before I could answer, rain began pouring down in sheets, soaking us within seconds. Panic set in as the ground turned slick and muddy. Lila clung to my arm, while Noah slipped and fell, letting out a cry of pain. I rushed to his side and saw that he twisted his ankle trying to climb down from a rock. It hurts, he whimpered, tears streaming down his face. My heart raced. We were miles from home, soaked to the bone, and now one of the kids was injured. I knew I had to act fast. Using my sweatshirt, I fashioned a makeshift splint for Noah's ankle. You're going to be okay, I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. Lila, bless her, stepped up like a true leader. I'll help carry him, she said, looping her arms under Noah's shoulders. Together, we hobbled through the forest, navigating obstacles that seemed impossible just moments ago. At one point, we had to cross a stream swollen with rainwater. I carried Noah piggyback style, gripping slippery rocks with white-knuckle determination. By the time we reached the edge of the woods, we were exhausted, drenched, and covered in mud, but alive. Back at the house, I called Mrs. Kendall to explain what happened. To my surprise, she didn't sound angry, just relieved. Thank you for keeping them safe, she said, her voice thick with gratitude. Meanwhile, Chloe texted me another beach selfie. Wish you were here, she wrote. I smirked, snapping a photo of the treehouse. Trust me, I replied. I'm having way more fun. That night, after the chaos of the day had settled, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, staring at my phone. Chloe's latest Instagram post showed her and Ethan dancing under neon lights, their faces glowing with excitement. 4 weeks, I'd been jealous of their carefree lifestyle, their ability to drop everything and chase fun without a second thought. But now, as I scrolled through their photos, I didn't feel envy anymore. I felt something closer to pity. Sure, they were having a blast in Miami, but what were they really gaining? A tan, a hangover, a few blurry memories they might not even remember by next week. Meanwhile, I'd spent my spring break creating something real, something that mattered. The treehouse adventure wasn't just about finding an old artist's hideaway. It was about teamwork, resilience, and making magic out of nothing. As I sipped my tea, I realized I didn't need validation from Chloe or Ethan. I already knew I'd done something incredible. The next morning, Lila and Noah begged me to take them back to the treehouse. We have to finish what we started, Lila insisted, clutching a notebook filled with scribbled ideas for letters to leave behind. Inspired by Margaret Lane's journal, they wanted to add their own stories to the time capsule. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, we wrote heartfelt messages. Lila's letter was poetic, describing how the treehouse made her feel brave and adventurous. Noah's was shorter but equally touching. Dear Treehouse, thank you for being cool. Love, Noah. We tucked the letters into a mason jar along with a drawing Noah had made, a superhero flying over a pirate ship, and promised to return someday to see if anyone replied. As we sealed the jar, I felt a strange sense of connection, not just to the kids, but to Margaret herself. She created the space as a sanctuary, a place where imagination could thrive. And now, decades later, we were carrying on her legacy. That evening, I couldn't resist sharing our adventure online. I posted a photo of the treehouse with the caption, "Sometimes the best adventures happen closer to home." Sparkles, #treasure hunt, #springbreakles. Within minutes, the likes started rolling in. Friends commented things like, "This is amazing," and "way cooler than Miami." Even Chloe texted me saying, "Okay, I'm officially jealous." But the best reaction came from Ethan. "Wait, you actually found a secret treehouse?" he asked when he called later that night. "That's so much cooler than anything we did in Miami." Hearing him admit that felt satisfying, sure, but also unnecessary. I didn't need his approval to know I'd had an unforgettable spring break. Still, it was nice to hear. The following morning, Lila and Noah greeted me with boundless energy, eager to hear more stories about explorers and adventurers. "Tell us about Amelia Earhart," Lila demanded, bouncing on the couch. "Or Indiana Jones." Noah chimed in, pretending to whip an invisible bullwhip. I laughed, pulling up videos of famous explorers on my laptop. Watching their eyes widen with wonder reminded me why I'd loved books and movies about adventure as a kid. Back then, I'd imagined myself as the hero of those stories, braving jungles and solving mysteries. Somewhere along the way, though, life had gotten in the way. Responsibilities piled up, and dreams of adventure faded into the background. Babysitting these two whirlwinds had reignited something in me, a spark I hadn't realized I'd lost. When Chloe and Ethan finally returned from Miami, they looked exhausted. Sunburned cheeks, tired eyes, and a distinct lack of energy told me their glamorous vacation hadn't been quite as perfect as they'd made it seem online. "How was babysitting?" Chloe asked, plopping onto my couch with a groan. I paused, grinning. "An adventure." I told them everything: the scavenger hunt, the treehouse, the storm, and the letters we'd left behind. They listened wide-eyed, interrupting occasionally to ask questions. "You mean you actually found a secret treehouse?" Ethan exclaimed. "That's insane." Chloe leaned back, shaking her head. "I can't believe we missed all that. Our trip was fun, but honestly, it feels kind of empty compared to what you did." I raised an eyebrow. "Empty? You guys were living it up in Miami." She shrugged. "Yeah, but none of it felt meaningful. Your spring break sounds way better." Inspired by my story, Chloe admitted she wished she'd done something more impactful during spring break. Next year, she declared, we're doing something different. Camping, hiking, something real. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. Agreed. No more clubbing till dawn. Let's be adventurers instead. Their enthusiasm caught me off guard. I hadn't expected them to change their perspective so quickly, or at all. But hearing them talk about future adventures made me smile. Maybe I'd planted a seed, showing them that fun doesn't always have to come with a price tag or a plane ticket. Sometimes, the best experiences are the ones you create yourself. A few days later, Mrs. Kendall handed me an envelope with a bonus inside. For going above and beyond, she said, smiling warmly. I tried to protest. It wasn't about the money, but she insisted. You gave my kids an experience they'll never forget. That's worth more than any amount of cash. I used the extra money to buy art supplies, inspired by Margaret Lane's journal. Paints, brushes, sketchbooks. It all felt like a tribute to the woman who had unknowingly changed my spring break. As I set up a little art corner in my room, I resolved to spend more time creating, exploring, and embracing the world around me. That weekend, Chloe, Ethan, and I gathered in my backyard to stargaze. It was a crisp spring night, the kind where the sky feels endless and full of possibilities. We talked about our respective spring breaks, comparing stories and laughing at our shared misadventures. I still can't believe you found a treehouse, Ethan said, shaking his head. It's like something out of a movie. I smiled, gazing up at the constellations. Maybe that's because it was, I replied softly. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled overhead, I realized how much I'd grown over the past week. I'd started spring break feeling resentful and stuck, but I ended it feeling empowered and proud. Adventure isn't about where you go, it's about how you choose to see the world. And for the first time in a long time, I was seeing it clearly. A few weeks later, I took Lila and Noah back to the treehouse to check if anyone had responded to our letters. To our delight, we found a small wooden box tucked into the corner of the treehouse. Inside was a handwritten note. To the brave explorers who left their stories here, thank you. Your words remind me that adventure lives not just in faraway places, but in the hearts of those willing to seek it. Keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep leaving your mark on the world. Lila gasped, clutching the note like it was treasure. Who do you think wrote it? She whispered. I smiled. Maybe another adventurer passing through. Or maybe Margaret herself, watching over her treehouse. Inspired by our discovery, I decided to start a blog documenting our adventures. My first post went viral, earning praise from readers across the country. Parents wrote to say my story had inspired them to plan their own family adventures, while teachers shared it with their students as a lesson in creativity and problem-solving. One comment stood out. Thank you for reminding us that the best adventures don't require passports or expensive vacations. They just require curiosity and courage. Reading those words filled me with pride. What had started as a simple babysitting gig had turned into something bigger than I ever imagined. The story ends with me sitting under the stars with Chloe and Ethan, reminiscing about our respective spring breaks. Though our experiences couldn't have been more different, we all agree that sometimes the best memories come from stepping outside your comfort zone. As I gaze at the sky, I know I'm ready for whatever adventure comes next. Whether it's climbing mountains, crossing oceans, or simply finding joy in the everyday moments, I've learned that life is what you make of it. And right now, I'm making it pretty darn good.